Welcome, friends. You're watching The Young Turks. I'm your host, Anna Kasparian, and I wish I could promise you an uplifting, positive show, but this show will be full of a lot of rage, a lot of resentment toward the Democratic Party and the complete and utter weakness that we see from its leaders and, yes, the Joe Biden administration as well. But don't worry, there's plenty of negative commentary for Republicans as well. But later in the show, when John Iadarola joins me for the second hour, we will mix it up a little bit. There are some fun stories in the rundown, including what one art museum decided to do once it realized that TikTok was censoring its nude art, and I'm just talking about statues and things. But they found a solution. And I'll tell you what that solution is later on in the second hour. But in the first hour, that's where there will be fire and fury because many concessions have been given to Joe Manchin. Biden is apparently more interested in appeasing the desires and the demands of Manchin and Sinema. So I'll give you the details on what those concessions are. Also, there are some rumors brewing regarding the affiliation, the political affiliation of Joe Manchin and whether he will remain a Democrat. So that's a big story today as well. And then later in the show, we'll discuss why exactly our local police departments are as militarized as they are and how they're using the excuse of climate change to become more militarized. It's an insane story. So before we get to all of that, as always, just want to encourage you guys to like and share the stream. If you're not a member, you can become one by clicking on that join button if you're watching on YouTube, or by going to tyt.com/join. And as always, we deeply appreciate our members because without them, this show would not be possible. So thanks again. With that said, let's move on to our first story of the day. And it is not a good one. There we go. All right, so conservative Democratic Senator Joe Manchin, who sounds quite a lot like a Republican member of the Senate, apparently has been speaking with his close confidants and advisors and telling them that he's thinking about switching parties. Now, he denies this publicly. After an article was published about it, he claims that it's all BS. But let me give you the details and you can judge for yourselves. Manchin has told associates that he is considering leaving the Democratic Party if President Joe Biden and Democrats on Capitol Hill do not agree to his demand to cut the size of the social infrastructure bill from 3.5 trillion to 1.75 trillion. Now, he has mentioned the possibility of switching parties to Joe Biden, according to reporting by David Korn over at Mother Jones. And that makes a lot of sense because just today we learned about all these concessions that Biden was making in regard to the budget reconciliation bill. That's the bill that is also referred to as the social infrastructure bill, with all sorts of provisions and programs meant to actually materially benefit the lives of ordinary Americans rather than corporations. Now, whenever corporate interests are at stake, it's much harder to pass legislation, especially when you're dealing with an insanely corrupt Congress and senators like Joe Manchin, who's far more interested in enriching himself from fossil fuel companies than doing what's right by his own constituents. Now, let's give you some more details on this story. Manchin has said that if this were to happen, he would declare himself an American independent. And he has devised a detailed exit strategy for his departure. So what exactly is that exit strategy? Well, again, according to this report from Mother Jones, first, he would send a letter to Senator Chuck Schumer, the top Senate Democrat, removing himself from the Democratic leadership of the Senate. He is the vice chairman of the Senate Democrats Policy and Communications Committee. Manchin hopes that would send a signal. He would then wait and see if that move had any impact on the negotiations. After about a week, he would change his voter registration from Democrat to independent. And by the way, the report was unclear in regard to whether Manchin would plan to continue caucusing with Democrats. That's an important element to all of this, because if he would refuse to caucus with Democrats, then Democrats would immediately lose their very slim majority in the Senate. Remember, there's a 50-50 split among Democrats and Republicans in the Senate, with Vice President Kamala Harris serving as the tie-breaking vote. Now, here's the thing. Manchin, according to this report, wanted to see if the threat of leaving the Democratic Party would maybe move the needle in his preferred direction in regard to the budget reconciliation bill. And turns out that it worked, because again, now you have Joe Biden making all sorts of insane concessions to Manchin. Okay, the concessions include refusing to increase the corporate tax rate. More details on that later in the show. Cuts to the more popular programs, including the child tax credit, elder care, community college. I mean, all sorts of things are now no longer gonna make it in the budget reconciliation bill. And that's because Biden, very likely, was terrified of this threat that this corrupt politician in the Senate was gonna switch his party from Democrat to American independent. Okay, it's incredible. Now, after this news was published, Manchin completely denied it, flat out denied it. Let's hear what he had to say.
I can't control rumors, and it's bullshit. Bullshit spelled with a B-U-L-L capital B.
I mean, someone give that man the Oscar. He's such a great actor, right? No, it's not BS. This is something, I wouldn't be surprised if his aides or people close to him leaked this to Mother Jones with the hope that this type of article would be published. I have no doubt that this kind of threat is what does end up moving the needle in his preferred direction in regard to the budget reconciliation bill. And sure enough, the first story that was published in the news today, the big headline today, was that Biden was making all these concessions. Now, we're in a strange place right now, because Biden makes these concessions for Manchin. It's unclear whether Manchin even supports the bill now that these concessions have been made. That doesn't answer any questions about what Senator Kyrsten Sinema is gonna do, because she's also against the budget reconciliation bill because she refuses to increase corporate taxes, because she's a bought politician who's looking out for her corporate interests. I mean, she's spent so much time fundraising as this debate has been brewing. I mean, she took the time she had off from the Senate recently to go to Europe and do some fundraising in Europe. That's what her priority is. As far as Manchin goes, he's even more corrupt, because it's not just about the corporate donors, it's about his personal financial investments. The fact that he is making money to the tune of $500,000 a year from a coal company that he founded, then passed on to his son. But he's still invested in it, he's still profiting off of it. So when we're having discussions about what we're gonna do in regard to this climate emergency, and reporters engage in their coverage by pretending as if Joe Manchin is just a good old boy from West Virginia, he's just looking out for his constituents, he's worried about coal jobs. No, he's not. No, he's not. 3% of jobs in West Virginia are tied to the coal industry, just 3%. It's not about jobs. Joe Manchin had no problem with a pharmaceutical manufacturer shipping jobs abroad to the point where unionized workers in his state lost their positions. He had no problem with that. It's not about jobs in his state. It's not about fiscal responsibility. Reporters need to keep it real about what Manchin's real incentives are. The incentives are in the wrong place. And to be quite frank with you guys, we give you the facts, we tell you how the negotiations are going, but the truth of the matter is there will be no progress in this country unless members of Congress are banned from investing in individual stocks, until we get money out of politics, until we have organized, powerful labor that can do strikes and essentially hold corporations and politicians' feet to the fire. These are things that we need. Everything else, right? Like the electoral politics, they matter, but to a very limited extent. Because think about what Biden ran on. Biden had a lot of tough talk when he was running as president. A lot of tough talk about reversing Trump's tax cuts for the rich. But his first proposal out of the gate wasn't even to reverse the corporate tax cuts, so corporations are paying 35% as they previously were. Now, the effective tax rate has always been much lower because of loopholes and all of that, but you get what I'm saying. His first proposal was, yeah, maybe not 35%, maybe 28%. That's not a reversal. So look, when he was telling his corporate donors, when he was telling Wall Street donors while he was campaigning that nothing will fundamentally change, he meant it. He meant it. This country is not governed by politicians who are looking out for their constituents' best interests. It's ruled by corporations, and it will remain that way until we change the power structure and change incentives. The incentives are in the wrong place. And so Joe Manchin is governing out of pure self-interest. That's it, end of story. And no amount of negative reporting about him, no amount of pressure is gonna change that. Because he's a rational actor. When you really think about it, he's a rational actor. Would you turn around and reject $500,000 a year to do the right thing for your community? I mean, I'd like to believe that most people would, but I'm also realistic and a little pessimistic about humanity. You gotta change the incentives. Right now, all of the incentives tell our politicians to work against us, not for us. And that's the real issue here. Doesn't matter if they're Democrats, doesn't matter if they're Republicans, they are completely taken over by the same corporate interests, by the same corporate donors, and that's where the real problem is. All right, well, with that said, why don't we move on to the details regarding Biden's concessions to Joe Manchin. So, President Joe Biden, who campaigned on reversing Trump's tax cuts for the rich, who claimed to care so much about the working people of America, has now turned around and offered all sorts of ridiculous concessions to corporate Democrat Joe Manchin in the Senate. Now, these concessions don't really seem to move the needle much for Joe Manchin. He still hasn't committed to voting in favor of the budget reconciliation bill. Neither has Kyrsten Sinema, but we can now see clearly what direction this bill is going in. It will be watered down, and it will do away with many of the provisions that were not only popular, but incredibly necessary to improve Americans' lives. Now, Biden discussed a 1.75 to 1.9 trillion price tag for the sweeping spending package. Remember, the initial price tag was 6 trillion, then it was lowered to 3.5 trillion, and now we're talking about maybe if we're lucky, 1.9 trillion. While the number is not finalized, it is far closer to West Virginia Democratic Senator Joe Manchin's 1.5 trillion top line than Progressive's number, which was 3.5 trillion. Oh, thank God. I mean, thank God we're appeasing Senator Joe Manchin. Thank God. I mean, that's the most important thing here. Now, has he agreed to vote in favor of the reconciliation bill? No, but this story gets far worse. First off, corporate tax hikes, gone. There will be no corporate tax hikes. Biden is willing to avoid increasing taxes on corporations. When Donald Trump came into office, the corporate tax rate was 35%. Because of his tax cuts for the rich, they were lowered to 21%. And then Biden, who claimed that he was gonna completely reverse them, came out of the gate as soon as he was inaugurated, puts out a proposal saying, we won't raise it to 35% like it was before Trump came into office, but we'll raise it to 28%. And then you have Joe Manchin crying and whining about it. Not just Manchin, of course, Republicans, but remember, Democrats have a slim majority in the Congress. If they really wanted to get something passed, they could. But you have Manchin and Sinema whining about increasing the corporate tax rate. At one point, Manchin's like, I don't know, maybe we could increase it to 25%, but no more than that. Now, forget about it, no corporate tax hikes. Washington Post reported that today, and so one of the major pay-fors for the budget reconciliation bill is cut. So if you're gonna cut the revenue that was meant to be raised to pay for the bill, what's gonna get cut from the bill? Well, I hope you guys are sitting down because it's a lot of really important stuff. Now, Biden informed House progressives that the final bill to expand the social safety net is expected to drop tuition-free community college. Oh, thank God, thank God. Yeah, offering 2 years of free community college was just too much. I mean, you don't want American students to get too entitled, do you? I mean, who do they think they are? 2 years of free community college. I mean, that wasn't even a half measure. It was less than a half measure coming from Biden. But it was just the bare minimum. 2 years of free community college because we're drowning in student loan debt. $1.6 trillion in student loan debt. Debt that people cannot get rid of even if they file for bankruptcy thanks to Biden's bankruptcy bill. So it's debt that puts Americans, workers, in this awful position for many for the rest of their lives. And he was just willing to do the bare minimum to alleviate that. But now he's backed away because we've got to appease Joe Manchin. But he goes further. Moreover, Biden indicated, I can't believe this. Biden indicated that the child tax credit, a key Democratic priority, would likely be extended for one additional year, much shorter than what many in their party wanted. The child tax credit will also likely be means tested, keeping with what Manchin had wanted. Remember, he's the guy running the country. He's the president. He's the guy who apparently got elected in the executive branch, right? Unbelievable. The child tax credit was supposed to lift 50% of children out of poverty who are currently in poverty. So, in my opinion, I would like our government to be a little more ambitious than that, but they can't even get that. They're not even willing to make the child tax credit, which is tremendously popular for obvious reasons, a permanent program. So instead of being permanent, now it will be limited to 1 year. Biden also indicated that to the group of progressives, I should say, that they would reduce the proposed funding for so-called home care for the elderly and disabled down to less than $250 billion. Democrats had wanted to keep the funding at $400 billion. I told you guys this was just gonna keep getting worse. I mean, think about where the priorities are. No, we need to provide less support in regard to elder care. No free community college. What are you talking about? We gotta maintain the corporate tax cuts. A system that allows for the most profitable corporations in this country to not only get away with paying nothing in federal income taxes, but sometimes they get massive refunds after they file their taxes. I don't know, ordinary Americans don't really get those kinds of tax incentives. There are no loopholes. Ordinary Americans, they pay their fair share, and as soon as there's a program that's meant to offer tax incentives that help raise kids, no, we can't make that permanent. Nope, sorry, 1 year program max, if that. And by the way, Manchin, after all these concessions, still refuses to commit to vote in favor of this legislation. But there's more. The president told progressive lawmakers that negotiators are weighing reducing the duration of paid leave benefit outlined in the package to 4 weeks, down from the proposed 12 weeks. So now we're going from I think generous, common sense, paid family leave proposal to now, if you're lucky, maybe 3 weeks, maybe, or 4 weeks. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised at this point if the final piece of legislation doesn't even include that. 4 weeks, that's it, if you're lucky. And what about Medicare expansion, which, by the way, Sinema is against, Manchin is against. The president said that they plan to keep an expansion of Medicare, which includes hearing, dental, and vision, in line with what the progressives want. I don't believe him. We'll see about that. But we know how powerful pharmaceutical companies are. We know that it was something that, again, Manchin and Sinema pushed back against, which is exactly why neither one of them, even after these concessions, has agreed to support the bill. So I don't believe Biden, Because Biden is weak, he's fundamentally weak. He doesn't know how to use sticks, and he's getting bullied by the likes of Joe Manchin. It's really sad, it's incredibly pathetic. It's frankly quite embarrassing. Now, he allegedly also wants to keep the universal pre-K and the investments to help combat climate change. But remember, Joe Manchin personally profits and benefits from dirty coal to the tune of $500,000 a year. So if you plan on maintaining the climate provisions, do you really think that Manchin is gonna play ball? Of course he's not gonna play ball. I'm telling you all this because you can read the tea leaves. Those climate provisions ain't gonna make it. In fact, here's Manchin this morning, who was asked about the provision meant to tax carbon emissions. Let's watch.
Are you okay with the carbon tax?
No, we're not talking. We haven't talked about that.
Are you saying you oppose the climate tax, or that you just aren't talking about it right now?
The carbon tax.
Carbon tax.
Yeah, no, we're not. We're not. The carbon tax is not on the board at all right now. Okay.
That was the president of the United States. I mean, not officially, but Joe Biden's getting slapped around by Joe Manchin. He's selling out his own supporters, the people who went out of their way to canvass for him, to campaign for him, to support him. Even progressives who didn't really favor him as the Democratic candidate, went out of their way to make a robust case in favor of getting that man elected. Because hey, Donald Trump is such a threat. Donald Trump was a bad dude, okay? He cut corporate taxes and Joe Biden said that he was gonna reverse that, but he didn't do it because he's a coward. The president of the United States is a coward. He gave Joe Manchin's wife a cushy little job, okay? Appointed her to a cushy little job, carrots, carrots, carrots. Where are the sticks, Biden? You're the president of the United States. But here's the problem, they're all emboldened to engage in this garbage because they all have the same corporate donors. Biden's cabinet is full of the corporate elite. There's a few good, appointments there. But at the end of the day, really, I mean, rhetorically speaking, Biden seems better than Manchin. But did he really want these provisions? Because I would argue that a politician, a president who genuinely wants to fundamentally change the country, who really wants to improve Americans' lives materially, wouldn't cower to Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin loses his mind the second a Democratic politician writes a strongly worded op-ed about him in a West Virginia newspaper. Do you know how easy it is to bully Joe Manchin? To beat him to submission politically? But he won't do it. Biden won't do it because he doesn't really want it. Either he doesn't really want it or he's just a coward, terrified that Manchin might leave the Democratic Party. So what is the establishment Democrats' case gonna be in 2020 when they wanna get reelected? When they don't actually offer their constituents much to improve their lives? What is their case gonna be? More fear mongering about Republican candidates? Good luck with that. Good luck with 2024. And we'll see how progressives play this, but honestly, it's really not looking good. All right, we gotta take a break. We'll be back with more. What's up, everyone? Welcome to our first social break of the day. I know I'm in a salty mood today because of what the news entails, but we do have a lot of positive stuff going on here at TYT. So I want to give you a rundown of some of our newer programming, starting with the Power Hour with Nina Turner, which you guys can watch every Thursday if you are a member. So that airs live on Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern time, 5 p.m. Pacific. And it's exclusive to our members. Go to tyt.com/join to watch that show and more of our exclusive members programming. We also have the Twitchuation Room. I gotta be honest, not an easy name to pronounce, but we've got the Twitchuation Room with Francesca Fiorentini, Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Pacific. Just go to twitch.tv/TYT to watch. And coming up on TYT, we do not have Happy Half Hour today. Brett is on a much deserved break, so you will not get Happy Half Hour after the bonus episode. However, tomorrow you've got Ravana and also Indisputable. So tomorrow after Indisputable, tune in for Reactions with Ravana at 4 p.m. Eastern time, 1 p.m. Pacific on twitch.tv/TYT. And don't forget to subscribe on Twitch. If we hit 6,200 Twitch subs by the end of the month, Jordan Yule, Adiana Vega, Brett and Brooke will hurt themselves by doing the Pocky challenge. They're gonna eat a super hot chip and probably regret it immediately afterwards. But if we get to 7,000 subs, Cenk will also engage in self-harm. So I don't know, you guys want that? Go ahead and subscribe, and you can subscribe for free through Amazon for free. So definitely do that because we always appreciate the Bezos bucks. For more information on that, go to tyt.com/prime. All right, moving on to our member comments. We've got Warata Dragon, who says Manchin switching parties, he's going to become a Dem. Ha 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 ha. Yeah, I mean, he's not. I don't even believe the threat, really. I think that was intentionally leaked to the press to make Biden panic, and he totally fell for it. Happily Vax says surely Biden can use some executive actions to make Manchin's coal company unprofitable. I mean, Biden's not going to do anything. Biden, it seems like, doesn't even understand. He doesn't comprehend what sticks are. Like, he's just unwilling to apply pressure. Dr. Chaos MD, Manchin is prostituting for more leverage in the reconciliation negotiations, or as the Dem party, if he were a Republican or an American independent that did not caucus with Dems, he would become just as relevant as all the other GOP senators. You're so right about this. This is a great point that none of us have heard of and wouldn't get the media courting his appearance or appearances on his show. Yeah, you're right about that. We're out of time, so we gotta go. But I'll read more of your comments later in the next social break. So keep writing in, keep writing in. More super chats, love it. Welcome back to TYT, Anna Kasparian with you. Look, the show started with some pretty negative news, but there is a story today that uplifts me and should uplift you as well. More importantly, should inspire you to organize your workplace. So let's talk a little bit about the labor activity that we're seeing, labor activity that I'm super excited about. Let's focus a little on John Deere. 10,000 John Deere workers are on strike in states like Iowa, Illinois, and Kansas. The strike began on October 14th and is open-ended until the workers secure a contract that they're actually happy with. Now, previously, there was a contract offered to them. It was a contract agreed upon by John Deere and the United Auto Workers, the union representing the workers. But the workers were unhappy with it because of the fact that John Deere is making record profits, and they wouldn't even be able to make those profits if it weren't for the work that the workers do. The revenue is generated by the workers, and they've decided very smartly if you ask me, to take advantage of the tight labor market to apply pressure to John Deere to secure a better contract, and I love it. The strike came after workers overwhelmingly voted down a first tentative agreement negotiated by the Auto Workers Union. Among the over 90% of members voting, 90% voted no. And by the way, Jonah Furman, who writes for Labor Notes, has done an excellent job reporting on this daily. Lots of details, so I highly recommend following his work. I love seeing reporters cover these types of stories. Now, Deere is in the midst of the most profitable year ever. The farm and construction equipment manufacturer expects to rake in $5.7 to $5.9 billion in net income this year, far exceeding its previous high of $3.5 billion in 2013. In fact, here's a report detailing more of the profits that John Deere's been making, but more importantly, why their workers are unhappy with the contract offer.
John Deere's profits grew by 61% in recent years. You point that out in your articles. And their CEO's salary grew by 160% during the pandemic. So why aren't employees getting a piece of those profits for the labor that they do every day?
That is the question. I mean, shareholders are getting a piece of the profits. The stock price has doubled since the pandemic. Dividends were hiked recently by 17%. I think that's a great question for CEO John May and the company to answer. The pie is growing. There's a bigger piece that could be handed out to workers.
There definitely could be a bigger piece handed out to workers, but that's not what we're seeing from John Deere. So what did John Deere offer? Well, Deere initially proposed ending the plant closure moratorium, doing away with overtime pay after 8 hours, eliminating seniority-based wage progressions, forcing workers to pay 20% of their health insurance premiums, and many other draconian concessions. By the way, there are some trends happening among corporations right now that some of you might have already experienced, but I just want to make sure that everyone's aware. One of the things that's been happening lately is workers haven't been getting paid during training. So while they're training for a job that they just got hired to do, you're seeing more and more of these companies refuse to pay their workers as they're in the process of training. There hasn't been a lot of reporting on that, but it is a trend that I've noticed, and if they can get away with it, they're gonna keep doing it. In this case, just take a look at what they wanted to do. They wanted to do away with overtime pay. And you're also seeing that trend become more widespread right now as the labor market is in fact tight because workers are demanding more. They're not just taking any job with awful working conditions and awful pay. And so the workers who remain are forced to do overtime. And John Deere's like, yeah, we want them to do overtime, but we don't want to pay them more for the overtime. And what I love is these workers who have a little bit of a safety net with this union are like, nah, if I'm working longer than 8 hours a day, I deserve more pay for every hour that I'm working in overtime. And they're absolutely right about that. Deere backed down from most of these concessions at the bargaining table. The agreement members rejected on October 14th, though, would have maintained the current premium-free health insurance plan. It also would have reinstated the cost of living adjustment, which was eliminated in the previous contract, but it introduced a new major concession: no pensions for new hires. And they didn't want it. They're like, no, we don't want this. And keep in mind, the union leadership agreed on this contract offer with John Deere, but the rank and file union members are like, no, absolutely not. And what I love is that they already have a two-tiered system that they've been trying to do away with in terms of the way people are paid. New hires don't get paid the same way that people with seniority get paid. And they wanted to introduce yet another tier to divide the workers. And they're like, no, we don't want that. We want solidarity in the workplace. And I think that makes a lot of sense. More on some of those details in the next clip.
Over the weekend, 90% of workers rejected an offer that John Deere had made and the union, the UAW, signed off on. Were you expecting that, many workers were going to vote no? And where does the union stand today? Did they misread their members?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of the story here, too, is that the United Auto Workers National Union is going through a lot of turmoil, and clearly they were not on the same page as these 10,000 John Deere workers who voted 90% no on this contract with 90% turnout. So it's not a small group that disagreed with the deal that the union brought back. I think the bigger context is a bigger conversation in the labor movement of which direction we're going to go in right now. There's a referendum happening in the national UAW where 1 million United Auto Workers members and retirees will be receiving a ballot next week that is about electing directly the top officers of the union to put an end to a recent cycle of corruption and decades of concessionary contracts. I mean, I think these strikes are also a reaction to bad deals made in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s when, companies cried poverty. And for a lot of these workers, it's transparent that that moment has passed. We are in a, pandemic moment where these corporations have done really well, and the unions need to be going to the table for more if you talk to these rank and file members.
See, when you have some labor power, which these unionized workers do have, they can understand that we're experiencing a pivotal moment with a tight labor market, and they can use that leverage to apply pressure for better work conditions and better pay. At Deere's tractor cab and assembly operations in Waterloo, Iowa, for instance, the 8,000 tractor line, which workers refer to as the moneymaker, and it in fact is, was already over 800 units behind schedule at the start of the strike. I'm sure that hurts. That line produces tractors that can cost up to $800,000. So the workers understand where the power is. Once you start threatening the profits of this corporation, maybe they'll take the negotiations a little more seriously, right? Because look, when you really think about it, this is the system we're living under. This isn't crony capitalism, this is capitalism. This is how capitalism works. And I explained that during my debate with Ben Shapiro, and he seemed to agree to an extent. Now watch, because I want you to think about what's happening over at John Deere in the context that I explained in this video. As an employer, right? It's not that you have to be awful to your employees, but you have a fiduciary responsibility to your shareholders to return, to provide a return on their investment. That's literally like it's baked into the system.
That's true.
And so as a result, I mean, what's the most expensive cost within a business?
It's always labor.
It's always labor.
We're also
so
in
when we
competition
talk
with other
about
people who pay.
exploitation, right? Exploitation always makes it seem like you're actively brutal and awful to your employees, which in some cases that does happen, but it doesn't even have to get that far. The whole point is to extract as much labor for the lowest possible price.
That can only happen in a
order
monopolistic
to
situation.
Increase profits and provide a return of investment to your shareholders. That's just the way the system works. That is just the way the system works. So executives over at John Deere are fulfilling their fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders. And that means cutting costs as much as humanly possible to return as much money to shareholders as they can, because that is their fiduciary responsibility. And by the way, to return money to themselves as well, because oftentimes the way executives are paid isn't even through a salary, it's through stock options. And so if they can make the shares more valuable, that means they can pay themselves quite a bit more. And the system is intentionally set up that way, guys. Which is why it's so important to ensure that workers have a seat at the table, that workers have some power. And in this case, they do. For instance, there are a lot of threats. I mean, look, I also wanna say, even with union representation, going on strike, workers put a lot on the line. And right now, John Deere is threatening the striking workers by taking away their health benefits. And as Senator Bernie Sanders mentioned on Twitter, John Deere's profits have exploded by some 67%, but workers who spent years with the company are now being forced off their insurance. That is beyond outrageous. John Deere is a hugely profitable company, and workers must be allowed to keep their health care during the strike. But here's the thing, they do have a little bit of protection because the United Auto Workers is prepared for things like this. Let me tell you how. The company plans to cut off workers' health insurance by the end of October. The United Auto Workers, which has a $790 million strike fund, is picking up COBRA payments and providing strike pay of $275 per week. So when we have these discussions about strikes, I know there's some talk of a general strike online. It's not that easy. There has to be an infrastructure in place. There needs to be a plan in place. There needs to be tough work done in the form of organizing to ensure that there's some form of relief, some sort of safety net to allow for the workers to really hold the corporate executives' feet to the fire. I'm really happy to see that John Deere is able to do this strike. This is the first strike since 1986 over at John Deere. And it's because they're organized, they have some power, and this moment is in fact pivotal. This tight labor market provides the avenue for them to do what they're doing right now, and more power to them. They deserve to benefit from the increased profits at that company because they're the ones doing the hard work. All right, we gotta take a break. We'll be right back with more stories, including why we're seeing more and more militarized police across the country. What's up, everyone? All right, let's do a rapid fire round of some super chats. R. Stone writes in and says, flash to Mr. Manchin, we knew you as a Republican when you referred to your fellow Republicans as friends and Democrats as colleagues. Bye, Felicia. Izzy Roberts says, and Big Cole was delighted to get rid of the union job posts. I mean, look, since the Taft-Hartley Act, which was intentionally passed to neuter unions, unions have been on the decline, right? And that really accelerated in the 1970s and moving on. But I'm excited about the moment we're in right now. I mean, you have Kaiser nurses threatening to strike. You have this massive strike happening with John Deere. It's like there's an awakening in the country among workers, and that's where I feel a lot of hope. There's also more and more worker co-ops being developed, almost 1,000 of them in the country, whereas, I don't know, during the Obama administration, there were practically none. People are starting to realize like, hey, we're putting in a lot of work and we're getting a lot less in return, and it just keeps getting worse year after year. But all this labor activity is really exciting. DH writes in and says, make ads / billboard / videos / meme saying Manchin wants to use taxpayer money to line his pockets, and Cinema voted to make us pay for research and development for medication and pay 10 times the rest of the world out of pocket. I hear you. I don't know if that would even move the needle at this point, because for the first time, at least in my career, I'm noticing this very clear public awareness of corruption, of the corruption that Manchin, Cinema, and other corporate Democrats are engaging in. And even though they're getting a lot of negative feedback as a result of that, it seems to have no impact on them, because they still have that massive incentive in the form of their personal investments, both in the stock market and through personal businesses, right? In the case of Manchin, that's certainly the case. Christopher Smith says, if you go back to 2019, there's an article in the New York Times, I think, where Biden told his donors that nothing would fundamentally change. We are here now. You're right about that, yeah. And honestly, I feel incredibly frustrated that I allowed myself to feel optimistic for even a second during the Biden administration. I know better than that. So Vicky Gray says, not a peanut butter or chocolate person, but why? But just tried Ben & Jerry's Netflix and chilled because Anna raved about it. Well, it's Wednesday ice cream day. My spoon is ready. Vicky, I'm so excited for you. I was gonna say super excited for you. I hope you enjoy it. So write in during the bonus episode today while we have our ice cream party, because I wanna hear what you think about it, okay? All right, thanks everyone. Let's get back to our show. Welcome back. Let's get to our next story. So we've been hearing a lot about police reform, and supposedly we had Democrats that were gonna do something about it. Turns out, no, they've completely dropped the notion of reforming police. But let's talk about why local police departments have become as brutal as they have been, and how they become more and more militarized year after year. Police in Iowa have been using a massive mine-resistant military vehicle to intimidate protesters and also to do things like serve warrants. Think about that. They're using military vehicles to serve warrants and to intimidate protesters who are supposed to be protected under our First Amendment. But when the Johnson County Sheriff's Office obtained that military vehicle, they told the community, and they also told the Pentagon, where they obtained that vehicle, that they needed it to help the community in the event of an extreme weather condition, in the event of a blizzard or a flood. They're essentially claiming that they need militarized equipment to fight climate change, to respond to climate change. Are they not merciful? Now, of course, that's not really what they used this military vehicle for. Now, the sheriff at the time said this: essentially, it's really a rescue, recovery, and transport vehicle. It didn't really turn out that way. In reality, Iowa City Police, who share use of the vehicle with the sheriff's office, staged it near last year's racial justice protests, where officers fired tear gas at peaceful protesters for refusing to disperse. And this May, residents fumed after police drove the former war machine through a predominantly black neighborhood to serve arrest warrants. Awesome. Now, why is this happening? It's actually common sense when you really think about it. For far too long, Americans have kind of been complacent. They've turned the other way as our government has poured so much of our resources into defense spending. As the country has, the government, I should say, has engaged in war after war, conflict after conflict. And of course, all of that is meant to drum up more support for more military spending. But when you spend that much money, think about it, we're gonna spend $7.5 trillion on defense over the next decade. When you spend that much money to enrich defense contractors, the military is gonna have a surplus of weaponry, of these types of vehicles. And what are they gonna do with all that stuff? Well, they're gonna look for a place to sell it, place to, store it. And wow, why don't we just give it to local police departments? And so throughout the years, police have become more and more militarized because they're literally taking military equipment and weapons from the Pentagon, which has this surplus. I'm really glad that this country's got its priorities straight, right? While you have all of these lawmakers, Democratic lawmakers, pretending to be so concerned about the $3.5 trillion price tag attached to the human infrastructure bill, the bill that would actually improve Americans' lives. Behind the scenes, they're like, yo, can we get a little more funding for defense? Because my defense contractor friends are legally bribing me to provide more money for them. Okay. So now the city council in Iowa City is trying to figure out what to do. They want to do away with this vehicle. In fact, one Johnson County city council member says this: "It's a vehicle made for wartime circumstances, and in my honest opinion, it doesn't belong here." You know what? Janice is right. It doesn't belong there. And if you don't believe me, why don't we take a look at what these vehicles look like. Now, this video is from the Palm Bay Police Department in Florida, but it's a similar militarized vehicle. It's known as the MRAP. Let's see if this belongs in city streets, in suburbs, if this is really what we want our police departments to have.
A lot of the equipment that came on the vehicle was standard. We'll start here. Here is the winch that came with the MRAP. Here are the siren boxes that we had installed after. You can see here one of the light bars that was installed and a heavy floodlight on top over the two windows there. On the very top is our turret, which also has ballistic properties, as well as the windows, as well as the armor that surrounds and frames out the windows. The windows there serve as observation for the operators are inside the vehicle, especially since the truck is so high. So if you look up there, we have a turret, which is a good observation point that is used by some of the operators during particular scenarios where we have to drive the truck up nice and close, get a good vantage point. The MRAP provides that for us.
Oh, ballistic properties, awesome. So think about that. Our tax money gets redistributed to private defense contractors, makes them incredibly rich, and then the machinery, the weaponry that they produce for the military then gets transferred over to local police departments and gets used against us. Awesome. The program is known as 1033. It's the 1033 program. And believe it or not, as bad as it was from the very beginning, it's only gotten worse because when no one was paying attention, Congress decided to loosen up some of the regulations associated with the Pentagon giving this type of stuff to local police departments. Last year, Congress made a little notice tweak to the 1033 program to give priority access for armored vehicles to police and sheriff's departments that claim to need them for disaster-related emergencies, HuffPost has learned, with few checks on how the vehicles are ultimately used. Look, I mean, there's gridlock in Congress unless it comes to brutalizing their own constituents with military-grade machinery. HuffPost exclusively obtained hundreds of requests for armored vehicles that local agencies wrote to the Defense Department in 2017 and 2018. And in contrast to just a few years earlier, when almost no law enforcement agencies mentioned natural disasters, there were agencies from virtually every state pleading for help with disaster preparedness. They're just looking out for us, okay? This is America's version of responding to the climate emergency. Duh, that's what this is about. And before Congress had even made any changes to the 1033 program, the Pentagon was already giving police some cues, okay? Within the past few years, on the forms that police and sheriffs must submit to justify their request for armored vehicles, the Pentagon began to list natural disasters as an example justification. By the way, they can claim that they need this equipment, these vehicles, these weapons, whatever it is, to respond to anything, even if they claim that they're responding to the climate emergency. But there's no oversight, like there's no regulation, there's no way of ensuring that that's what they're using it for. So they can lie, and they can use the MRAP for whatever they want, serving warrants, intimidating protesters. Last year, while there were protests in every major city in this country to reform policing, we didn't get police reform from Congress. There was no movement on a federal level. But they did pass this. The Congress passed this. Think about the timing of this. And it tells you everything you need to know about how things really work in government. It's unbelievable, except it's really not. None of this should surprise anyone. No one should be appeased by a Black Lives Matter mural in front of Trump Tower. That's just meant to give you the illusion of change and reform. It's just an empty gesture. Let's just keep it real, guys. You know it, you know it. Okay, members of Congress kneeling in kente cloths is insulting because it's nothing more than performative garbage to try to placate voters when in reality, behind the scenes, they're signing off on this kind of stuff, making it easier for local police departments to obtain military-grade vehicles to terrorize their own communities that they're supposed to be serving and protecting. That's the way Congress really works. So anytime you see a Democratic lawmaker engage in any type of pandering for any type of marginalized group, be super skeptical about it, because talk is cheap. What are they actually doing legislatively? Because police reform seems like it's a thing of the past. They're not doing anything about that. But they had no problem loosening up restrictions to pass off Pentagon equipment to local police departments. All right, let's talk a little bit about a member of Congress who's been indicted. Some pretty serious charges here. Republican Congressman Jeff Fortenberry has been indicted on federal charges for allegedly lying to the FBI. Now, this has to do with some of the campaign donations he received and how he proceeded to lie about those campaign donations. Keep in mind, this is in America where we have legalized bribery. But there are still some rules in place, and Fortenberry allegedly broke those rules. Fortenberry was expected to be arraigned Wednesday, meaning today, on charges that he lied to federal investigators about illegal campaign payments funneled to him by a Lebanese Nigerian billionaire. In a video, Fortenberry maintained his innocence. He is blaming the prosecution on politics, even though the investigation actually began under the Trump administration. So I have more details on what he is accused of, what he's been indicted on. But before I do that, I do want to turn to the video that was referenced in that graphic. This was Fortenberry trying to get ahead of the story. Let's watch.
I wanted to send you a video because we do have something hard to tell you. About 5.5 years ago, a person from overseas illegally moved money to my campaign. I didn't know anything about this and used some other Americans to do so. They were all caught and punished, thankfully. About 2.5 years ago, I had a knock on my door on a weekend. They were FBI agents from California. I let them in my house. I answered their questions. Later, we went back and answered further questions. I told them what I knew and what I understood. They've accused me of lying to them and are charging me with this. We're shocked. We're stunned. I feel so personally betrayed. We thought we were trying to help.
Fascinating that he's shocked because apparently he was notified of the illegal campaign contribution, but didn't do anything about it. Said, essentially through his actions that he didn't really have much of a problem with it. Then he lied to investigators, allegedly, which is why he's been indicted. So the amount of foreign money funneled into his campaign amounted to $30,000. Was it worth it, really? $30,000, okay. Despite learning about the illegal campaign contribution, Fortenberry did not file an amended report with the Federal Elections Commission. Then he lied about what he knew about the scheme in 2 different interviews with the feds. One that took place in March of 2019, the other took place in July of 2019, when Donald Trump was president, by the way. So to say that this is politically motivated is clearly ridiculous. Now, TYT Investigates also broke a story that found that Fortenberry is a member of the family. That's the rabid right-wing group behind the annual prayer breakfast. And the prayer breakfast is essentially an opportunity to do some more lobbying. Democrats, unfortunately, have attended it. Democratic presidents have attended it. But through TYT Investigates reporting and some pressure, some congressional Democrats have now said and pledged that they won't go to the annual prayer breakfast. Now, I want to give you more details about his ties, Fortenberry's ties to the family. So Representative Mark Sillinger went to jail for funneling funds tied to a terrorist organization through the family. He was pardoned last year by Donald Trump, of course. The family also played cameo roles in the sex scandals of then governors Mark Sanford, who apparently really loves to hike the Appalachian Trail with mistresses, then Senator John Ensign and others. Now, Fortenberry has publicly defended the National Prayer Breakfast after multiple reports identified the lobbying that transpires there. Common political parlance would call these engagements back channels, Fortenberry wrote. We call them friendships. Yeah, those are his real buddies, the people lobbying, engaging in the bribery. Those are his friends. Now, unlike other members of Congress who attend the breakfast, Fortenberry is actually able to invite people to the National Prayer Breakfast. And I want to give you a sense of who this guy is and who he tends to invite. One was controversial Archbishop Timothy Broglio, who leads the military archdiocese and who recently bucked the Pope to oppose vaccine mandates in the military. He too was invited by Fortenberry in 2016. Broglio had come out alongside evangelical causes before. He supported President Trump's ban on transgender troops and tried to rile up American troops against Obamacare. So there are many issues with the family and the National Prayer Breakfast. There's the corruption tied to it. The National Prayer Breakfast has one funder. This was a story that also broke with TYT Investigates. And that funder is right-winger Franklin Graham, just rabidly anti-LGBT. In 2017, Nebraska Family Alliance Executive Director Karen Bowling posted online that she had been invited to the National Prayer Breakfast by Fortenberry. Bowling's organization opposes LGBTQ and reproductive rights. So look, one thing that we know through TYT Investigates and its reporting is that there are a lot of shady and nefarious foreign figures that also attend the National Prayer Breakfast. Now, I'm speculating here and I want to be clear about that. But I do want to understand a little more about Fortenberry's relationship with this Lebanese Nigerian donor who illegally contributed $30,000 to his campaign. Remember, the family was also associated with that effort in, I believe it was Uganda. Yes, it was in Uganda to pass this awful bill. It was referred to as the Kill the Gays bill that would implement the death penalty on anyone who was found guilty of being gay. I'm not even kidding. Luckily, in the end, that bill was watered down to, all right, we won't execute gay people, but we'll put them in prison for the rest of their lives. Later, the Ugandan Supreme Court struck it down. But understand that evangelicals who are part of the family, okay, were lobbying for that bill in Uganda. That's what this organization is. So for Fortenberry, it's about the criminal activity that he allegedly engaged in with this campaign donation. But aside from that, his ties to the family make me question other activities. So the investigation is ongoing. He was expected to be arraigned today. He has been indicted on these criminal charges. We'll see how it plays out. But there's no Donald Trump to protect him or pardon him. We'll see where this guy ends up, but it's not looking good for Fortenberry, who is completely pretending to be surprised by these charges. All right, that does it for hour one. We're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, John Iadarola will join me for more of the news. Don't miss it.
I'm old enough that I remember when Captain Crunch put the berries in it.
Yay, crunch berries!
was like, ooh, the fake berries.
Remember?
We're gonna try that.
We did a story back in the day about how a woman sued, I don't know, General Mills.
She'd been eating it for 4 years, believing that it was actual berries. Yeah. She's like, these aren't real berries at all. I'm like, I got news for you. Captain Crunch isn't really a captain or a person. Joining me now, legendary whistleblower and American hero, Edward Snowden. First question is, hey, where are you?
I'm in my apartment in Moscow.
All of a sudden, in the studio, Jim Gaffigan, everybody.
Mental illness is, completely undiagnosed in our society.
It's not about a particular administration. It's about a broken system of power, and through that, really, the instrumentalization of a system of not justice, but injustice.
People understand whether they claim to deny climate change or not. Our collective house is in crisis. We're also dealing with the legacy of 40 years of economic policies that have made people's lives more precarious.
Sometimes you got to force people into their humanity. Sometimes you have to shake people into empathy.
Senator Elizabeth Warren joins us in the studio.
Healthcare is a basic human right, and we are fighting for basic human rights.
In order to actually achieve that vision of everyone having access to the same resources and getting to determine the outcome of their life, we have a lot of work to do, and it needs to start right now.
Here's something you may not know. When you deposit your money in a big bank, it doesn't just sit, safe and secure, in a vault. Instead, your money could end up building oil pipelines, mining for coal, or drilling in the Arctic. So if you're concerned about the planet, give your money something good to do. Make the move to green with Aspiration's fossil fuel-free account and join the thousands each week who are switching to save their dollars and save the planet at the same time.
Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Idarola. This is gonna be a big one.
What Donald Trump has done as president has cut taxes for the wealthy and made life better for rich people. But he's made life worse for poor people.
We're making America great again by throwing more money at the military to destroy other countries because that makes us great instead of investing it in ourselves.
That it's Donald Trump and it's Stephen Miller. The choosing is based on wanting to create cruel and inhumane conditions to scare other people away from ever coming to the United States.
The opportunity to make money off of tragedy is the American way.
There is only one place to put garbage people: in the trash.
We've never had so much access to so much information with so little idea of what the hell is going on.
What does enforcing our borders have to do with traumatizing children? Absolutely nothing.
I think a sane person could say the current situation we have right now is radical. But what we're doing is literally making the world more like hell. That's a warning sign.
ShopTYT.com now has books. One of them is Ryan Grimm's book, We've Got People. That's a saying that AOC said, they've got money, we've got people. It's the best tracing of the AOC victory I have seen anywhere. It's the most accurate, and it's got great details. The book actually goes all the way back to Jesse Jackson and how he's the original Bernie Sanders. If you want to know how we're going to win going forward, those lessons are super important, and they're in Ryan's book. So check it out right now at ShopTYT.com.
We found the perfect person to lead the army, Allison Hartson.
The establishment media works hand in glove with our corporate legislators, and our corporate legislators work hand in glove with the corporation. And we're going to make it so that it's a decentralized force throughout the country so that we can quickly identify stories, quickly identify troll farms, and go in and neutralize the enemy, and then start building responsible media throughout the country and on every platform available.
Welcome back to TYT. Anna Kasparian and John Idarola with you. Bart Kyle, he's still on the ones and twos, but Bart, you got. Thank you very much. You got, I like the EDM on Wednesdays. It gets me pumped, ready to go.
I'm unpumped.
What was that, a lullaby? That was a lullaby.
No, that was just getting us ready for Ice Cream Wednesday for the bonus episode, guys.
I'm definitely ready for Ice Cream Wednesday. So if you're not a member, you probably don't know much about our ice cream parties on the bonus episodes on Wednesdays. You can become a member and learn more about it.
You can get some ice cream.
You can get some ice cream.
Participate.
Yes,
I love it.
We can
create the biggest ice cream party in history. Together.
And by the way, not just nationally, worldwide.
Ever.
We're like
anywhere.
We're like Mr. 305, right? He's Mr. Worldwide, but maybe we're Mr. and Mrs. Worldwide.
You've lost me.
Okay. Anyway, special thanks to our Twitch community. We are on so many different platforms. Twitch happens to be one of them, and I want to say special thanks to all of our Twitch viewers who have written in and given us bits. Saya, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name or your handle, cheered 1,000 bits. We have Dream Weaver Dragon cheered 1,000 bits. Trimu Batiki 300 bits. These are all people, by the way, who are hoping that Cenk ends up eating the Pocky chip. I'm so proud of you for saying no to the Pocky chip.
Thank you. Okay, you started to say that and instantly I filled it in with the most horrifying thing. I thought you were gonna say, I'm so proud of you for changing your mind and you're gonna do it. I was like, okay, who the hell told you that?
No.
And now is like trying to, it was Jordan, wasn't it?
No.
It was Jordan.
Jordan trying to bully us on Twitter.
Exactly. Oh my God, he totally was.
Yeah. We also have Xander, who resubbed 10th month. So glad to have found you. We're glad to have found you too. Eb Flipper also resubbed. This is the 11 month. I'm so grateful to have an even-handed presentation of the news where I know I'm hearing the facts as you know them to the best of your ability. That's too rare these days. Thank you for the love, really appreciate that. All right, I'll read some more super chats and comments during our social break, but for now, why don't we move on to an update on the Ahmaud Arbery case. So, potential jurors in the Ahmaud Arbery murder trial have mistakenly been given access to Arbery's mental health history, something that was supposed to be blocked because it should have nothing to do with the trial. Now it's evidence that was actually already ruled inadmissible by the judge, so it's curious how this kind of mistake happened. So let's give you the details. Vice reports that jury candidates who visit the Glenn County Superior Court website seeking information about what time and what day they need to show up can view in just a couple of clicks all the motions filed so far in the murder trial of Travis and Gregory McMichael and William Rhodey Bryan. Those documents include specifics about Arbery's mental health and prior criminal history that a judge ordered suppressed and never brought up in court. How did that happen? Right now we don't know, right? Like there needs to be an investigation. But for those of you who might wonder which case is this? There have been so many brutal shootings involving unarmed black men. This is the story of the black man who was just jogging in Georgia and then was chased down by a white man and his son who then proceeded to gun him down because they thought he looked suspicious. So luckily they're facing a murder trial as a result. I'm happy about that. But already we're seeing this questionable behavior taking place.
It's so crazy and so specifically crazy that I don't, it's like, okay, so it's supposed to be suppressed so nobody can see it. Oh, okay, then I'll just deliver it directly to the people who aren't supposed to see it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I accidentally faxed it to them. It can't just be as simple as, no, I'm just gonna upload it. Because that's gonna, assuming that they've seen it, and I know that we need to find out if they actually saw it or whatever. That's just going to produce a mistrial. Like how,
they're hoping for a
could that be your strategy?
The defense, of course, is hoping for a mistrial.
Yeah.
Now,
but to what end? To delay?
I mean, whatever they can do to try to get these dangerous people off on the horrendous crime that they committed.
Yeah, I guess
they gunned down a black guy who just in their minds was suspicious. He was jogging. And then there was a home or something that was under construction, and Arbery apparently and by the way, this kind of stuff terrifies me all the time. Cuz and I know that the way that I get treated is very different than how a black man gets treated in Georgia. But I'm always fascinated by architecture, by homes, whatever. Like there have been multiple times where there's like an abandoned home or something, and I go up to it and I look at it and I try to look through the window because I'm fascinated by it. So do you just assume that that person is a criminal or someone worth gunning down, carrying out an extrajudicial murder?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't understand how, again, I'm not Adrian Lawrence, I'm not the legal expert, how this results in anything more beneficial to the murderers than a delay. And maybe a delay is all they want. But I don't see how this results, like it is so clearly more sadistically beneficial to them. It's not logically beneficial to them, but it's sadistically beneficial to them and not to the representatives of those that they murdered. So I don't understand the strategy.
I think, look, honestly, and I think that this is a way to, even if the evidence is now, it's considered inadmissible in court. The judge is like, listen, even though he is dead, he still has the right to medical privacy. So no, you're not allowed to use his medical records and his mental health history as evidence in this trial.
Yeah.
So, but I think it's a way of influencing potential jurors, even if that evidence is not admissible in court.
Sure.
It can still bias or create a bias.
Yeah, totally. Assuming that it doesn't get declared a mistrial and the jury is gotten rid of and we get a new jury.
Right.
Which seems like the only plausible outcome. Yeah, and look, the medical privacy defense makes sense, but also I think more importantly, logically, that information is irrelevant.
It's totally irrelevant. The judge said that too, by the way. The judge is like, no, Ahmaud Arbery is not on trial. The people who gunned him down and murdered him, like those are the people on trial. So his
But what if he had anxiety or depression? So that's the thing, like the knee-jerk thing that I think most people would say is it's irrelevant whatever crimes he might have committed because he wasn't committing a crime there. But that's actually not going far enough because it's irrelevant even if he had committed some crime there. If he had trespassed. Let's say he had trespassed and he really was scoping out the place. He was casing the joint, as they say, and he was planning to come back and steal a drill later or something. Still irrelevant. You don't get to gun him. You don't get to get a vigilante posse together, drive after a person and gun them down. You don't get to do that even if they committed a crime, and he didn't commit a crime. And so on multiple levels, it's insane. The fact that they want that information out there is obviously designed not to have any effect on like the logic of the jurors. Well, we really do need to consider this context. It is simply to activate, to trigger racial bias that the defense is clearly hoping is gonna be in at least some of those jurors. And hey, what do you know, it's America. It's probably a pretty good strategy because the vast majority of Americans have, at the very least, some level of implicit bias and would be triggered to think that if you had mental health issues or if you'd committed crimes in the past that mattered. There's a reason they always search through the social media, try to find something that makes a person look scary. They know that that affects people.
Yeah,
if you want to know who's scary, it's the people who jump in a truck with a shotgun and go and kill someone. Those people are scary. Let's talk about them. Let's talk about any run-in with the law that they've had, any mental health problems they've had. How about that? Because they, unlike Ahmaud Arbery, are murderers.
They do this with everyone. I mean, Breonna Taylor got gunned down in her own apartment. Wasn't doing a damn thing wrong, okay? Just opened fire indiscriminately into her apartment, gunned her down, died in the hallway of her own apartment. And what was the first thing we saw? What? Oh, she was dating a guy in the past who was engaging in drug trafficking. Like, well, who cares? Who cares? She did nothing wrong. She's in her. There's no justice for her. No one's even thinking about that story anymore. Gone. No justice for her. No justice for her family. And in this case, the video was so excruciating to see. It was so brazen, so hateful, so awful that, wow, look at this. We have a rare instance where people are gonna face trial for what they did. But it's gonna be painful every step of the way because they always try to find ways to put the victim on trial instead of focusing solely on the individuals who decided to open fire and kill an unarmed person.
Yeah, and even with that video, it's not like everybody, including the people who would joke about Trayvon Martin and all that. It's not like all of the Ben Shapiro's and Tucker Carlson's and Matt Walsh's are like, okay, well in this case you got us. No, they still don't accept it. They are very interested in whether he ever shoplifted 6 years ago or something. That matters. It's not race or anything. It's not racism, but it matters on some level they can't explain.
There were people on the right trying to clear Derek Chauvin of what he did. Like, imagine watching that video of what happened to George Floyd.
Tucker Carlson still, every once in a while, like every 5 weeks, he does a thing about how George Floyd just spontaneously died. He was always gonna die at that moment. It had nothing to do with Chauvin. Chauvin was really just in the wrong place at the wrong time on his back and neck.
All right, I know that's a super depressing story, but look, the good news is these men are standing trial.
Yes.
And we live in a country where that's way better than what we've experienced in the past. So I hope that justice will be served, and we'll stay on this story and give you guys updates as we learn more. But for now, we gotta take a break. When we come back, we've got more news for you, including cancel culture that's done by the right wing, but they get no negative attention for it. So we'll give you that story and more when we return. What's up, everyone? Welcome to our social break. All right, I moved over to our members' comments. Jar of Jam Bongino writes in. Stuff isn't being passed with his dead weight anyway. Call that fool's bluff. This is in regard to Joe Manchin threatening to leave the Democratic Party. An animal in the attic, 20% of wages for health insurance. Wow, wouldn't it be amazing if someone had proposed some kind of all-encompassing health plan policy that could eliminate having health care tied to employment? Yeah, it would be great, right? Isn't it weird how, oh wait, that has happened. No, it's amazing. It's also amazing that like employers are against Medicare for all. Wouldn't it be great if employers didn't have to pay for health insurance for their employees because the government was,
Make any sense?
It makes no sense.
Nothing makes sense.
But I know why they like it. Because it forces people to stay at jobs where they're being abused, because it's not just about losing your wage or your salary if you quit, it's about losing your literal health care. It makes you desperate.
Yep.
And they love that.
Yeah, chaining someone to a desk costs money, you have to buy the chain, but then they're chained to the desk.
That's right.
Yeah.
An animal in the attic. Oh, thank you for that comment. Colorado Blue Blazer says, union strong, wish we could get a general strike going. I think it's possible, but it's not possible in the near future, right? It's not as easy as, we're gonna do a general strike. Like, there's a lot of organizing involved, a lot of hard work involved. And trust me, it requires a lot more than me talking about it or any podcaster or YouTuber talking about it. It takes work on the ground.
Pretty sure you just need a hashtag. But also, it's it's coming after, like it's not like it would have been easy financially for tens of millions of people before. Now it's after one of the most difficult years ever.
Yeah.
It's difficult.
It is difficult, which is why, like, when I was talking about the John Deere strike, the fact that the United Auto Workers has that $790 million strike fund, so they can actually take care of the workers as they're striking, that's huge.
Yeah.
That's what labor power is, right? It's about having a plan in place. That's what we're talking about when we're discussing this in terms of like organizing and having a plan in place. That way people can actually strike without their families going hungry, But still, even with that kind of protection.
Losing your house or getting kicked out of your apartment.
Exactly. Brittany says, some days this show is the only thing that makes me smile, thank you. Are you a glutton for punishment? Like, I'm glad you like the show, but I feel like the show today has been like so negative, and it's not my fault. It's just what the news is.
Yeah, you have to cover the news. Follow-up question: what exactly about that last segment made you smile?
No, this was.
I know.
She wrote it before that story. All right, and Shy Coltrane 42 says the delay is intended to taint the jury pool to bring reasonable doubt that somehow Arbery was inherently a criminal. You're absolutely right about that. That is what this is about. All right, let's get back to the show. Welcome back to TYT. Anna Kasparian and John Idarola with you. Make sure you check out John's show, The Damage Report, every day, Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern.
We got Gary Chambers tomorrow.
Oh.
Back after a break, he'd run for Congress. Now he's gonna be back with us.
Nina Turner, regular guest host.
Yesterday,
yeah, super exciting. So everyone check that out. Also, special thanks to our newest YouTube members, Bev in Boulder and Tim S. Our members help to keep this show sustainable. Also help us to function without needing to rely on advertisers. I really, really don't like doing live reads. So thank you.
Since when?
I hate doing live reads so much that the one partner that Jacobin has, which is Verso Books, like Nando's the one who always does that read. He's like, I got it, don't worry. I'm like, I'm not doing live reads. Nice. I'm sorry, that's where I put my foot down. Anyway, all right, nothing against Verso Books, love Verso Books. It's just, anyway. I don't even promote my own work. I'm not a good promoter. No. All right, but I love you guys, and I'll promote the hell out of you guys because you guys are heroes. You allow us to do what we love, and I appreciate that. All right, let's talk about cancel culture that never gets discussed by the very people who tend to whine the most about cancel culture. A school board member from St. Charles, Illinois, has resigned from the school board due to vicious and ongoing harassment that she received in response to her stance on implementing a COVID-19 mandate within the school. Carolyn Wabel is her name, and she was first elected to the school board back in April of 2017, and she was reelected this past spring. But because of the fact that she actually wants to keep kids in the school safe from COVID, wants to make sure the educators are also safe and healthy. She's been met with a lot of hatred and insane intimidation from conservatives in the community. Let's watch.
Tell us what happened to your home.
Well, someone, and again, we don't know who, but there was wires cut on my unplugged or cut on my air conditioning unit. So we had to replace that in the home. Someone came on premise and unplugged a refrigerator freezer in my garage and then entered or opened the door into the laundry room very loudly when I was home. And by the time I got there, there was no one there. So those reports have been filed, but no evidence as to who it was at this time. But all intimidation tactics. If it was just one or two incidents, it would be perplexing, but that all those combined, there's also been trespassing on my property out, not in the public area, into my actual property. I have a video doorbell that's picked up some of this. We've had, as you said, the dead rodents.
I mean, that's criminal intimidation. And she was forced out of a job she was elected to do. And remember, we've done some coverage in regard to how these we've shown you the videos of the school board meetings going going off the rails, various people losing their minds. It's become like a hot button thing. And then we learned that there are Koch-backed organizations that are funding these efforts. It's not some like grassroots thing happening. So what about this cancel culture, right? She was forced out of doing a job she was elected to do. And she was just trying to keep students and educators in the school safe.
Yeah, I add this to the long list of reasons why I say that cancel culture literally doesn't exist, and I hate when we even use the term. Because a thing exists, you call it cancel culture when it's the left or someone in the center doing it. Otherwise, totally cool, don't focus on it. And that's why I hate sustaining that term, because it produces an uneven playing field that benefits the right. And I have no interest in participating in that. Yeah, in this case, it's obviously terrifying. If they have this weird opposition to things being cold, like getting rid of the AC, the refrigerator. It's like weird petty stuff. Like you're pretending you're a poltergeist or something. But a person who sneaks into your laundry room could sneak into your bedroom and murder you in your sleep. It's as simple as that. And that's what it's intended to make her afraid of. And if that had happened, if that, they had gone even farther, because what have you done? You have taken the craziest people in the country, made them even crazier and more scared about vaccine shedding and things like that. And then you've sent them at a target group. You've said that these are the people you need to go after. And it seems fairly inevitable that it will become even more violent than it already has. And when that happens, there are not gonna be any apologies or acknowledgements that they've gone too far or their rhetoric was insane, because it is intentional. In the same way that the Kochs are busing people and all of that, as they always do for these AstroTurf things, they're also funding the media infrastructure that makes it a durable thing. Ben Shapiro and all the people at the Daily Wire and the Daily Caller and the Daily Eagle or whatever it is, they're receiving funding from the same groups. It's beneficial to them, and so that's why you have it. And if some people who just wanted to serve on a school board end up fearing for their life, omelets, eggs, all that.
Now, Carolyn Wabel said the following during an interview regarding the harassment she's been getting. Let's go to the second graphic here. She says, I was vocal about following the mandate because it's the right thing to do to follow policy. But it's certainly gone past following the mask and quarantine policy at this point. It's very personal. We're just talking about masks, by the way. All right. She also says, I have tough decisions about parameters and boundaries and what appropriate behavior is. And there's a particular group of parents that don't care for that. They believe in a boundaryless style. And like the thing that I'm always curious about, and this argument, by the way, or this question extends to those who demand that any mention of race be taken out of school curriculum. What about the parents who disagree? Right? What about the parents who want their kids to wear masks? What about the parents who have children with, who are immunocompromised, who want to ensure that their kids are able to go to school and be safe? Like, what about all those questions? Like, do those parents matter at all? And the reason why you have administrators and school boards and educators, and people who are literally like experts in crafting curriculum and all of that, is because if you don't have that, which parents get to be the arbiter of what the school is like?
The craziest.
I mean, that's what they want.
Well, I mean, that's what they're getting. Like, they are winning these seats. They've already been doing that for some time. They're gonna continue to. These regular people who don't have the resources, the inherited wealth to be the next Marjorie Greene necessarily, they do want something. And this is a thing they can run for without much money, and just whip a bunch of other crazy people into voting for them. The school boards are going to be dens of insanity. And we're going to be paying the consequences for that. By the time we're paying those consequences, really beyond just COVID, in terms of curriculum, in terms of God knows what, prayer in schools, and which clubs you can have, and all that stuff, we might not even remember exactly how we got to this crazy place, but they're producing fertile ground for insanity distributed through school districts throughout the country that are gonna go on for literally years.
It's really frustrating. Because when there's money behind this kind of stuff, it just lasts. It keeps going until they get what they want. Like the left doesn't have that. The left doesn't have like some nefarious organization or nefarious group of people funding efforts to make public schools worse.
Yeah.
It's just, anyway.
Yeah, and we don't have the media version. George Soros is not in fact paying us. I sometimes wish that he was. I'd say the same thing as I am, but I'd love to make a couple $1,000s before he realizes I'm not playing ball. But we don't have that. We literally don't.
No.
There are no, you could simplify it and say there are no good billionaires. There are no good leftist billionaires, really. They're not interested. They're certainly not interested in anything that is going to challenge their money, their tax rate, those sorts of things. And we've been very clear for years and years and years where we stand on that. So they're not interested.
Yeah. All right, well, let's move on to our next story because there were some workers who took action today at Netflix. The Trans Employee Resource Group over at Netflix have organized a virtual walkout and rally that took place earlier today. Let's give you some details on it. The tweet from Variety claims that Netflix employees are staging a walkout protesting the streamer's defense of Dave Chappelle's stand-up special rife with transphobic and homophobic commentary. I know TYT covered this. I was away when this story broke. Real curious. Did you watch the special?
No, I haven't seen it.
You haven't seen the special?
So I haven't opined specifically about that one. I've seen his other Netflix commentary, and it sort of leads.
So
there's a through line, but
at first there were calls to take it off the platform, and I disagree with that, right? But I also disagree with getting angry at people who didn't like it or found it offensive. You're allowed to find it offensive. There's no question about that. But I also think that no specific group of people should get to decide like what should be censored on the platform, right? I did watch the full special because I was curious. I wanted to know how I really felt about it. And what sucks is that there were really good moments in that stand-up special. There were moments where he made really smart commentary, interesting commentary on race. But to me, like the third act especially just dragged on and made it clear to me that he kind of like stopped with the comedy and it just became pure social commentary. And it was very clear to me that he was incredibly sensitive about the criticism he's received from the transgender community. Yeah, just wanted to share my perspective on it.
And look, you're adding nuance to it. Don't bother. There's no point. They've already downvoted the video. You can't. No. Yeah, he's sensitive. I get it. When I'm criticized, I get sensitive too. He's not immune to that. He's a human.
Yeah.
Comedians in general, a lot of them over the past 10 years have become very, very sensitive about people having preferences and what they joke about. Those preferences have always existed. Certain groups have not generally been heard when they express those. That has changed and that bothers a lot of people. But I would say, if you are going to attack a group of protesters and say, how dare you tell someone what they can say, understand that you're doing that exact same thing at that moment.
Yeah.
You're defending people's ability to express whatever they think, whatever they want, while telling a group of people not to do that.
Yeah.
And now, really fast, it's not totally hypocritical because there is one difference. Dave Chappelle is a single, famous, well-off person who has fans, who will defend his ability to say whatever he wants. These Netflix employees, we don't know their names, we don't know who they are, they're not famous, and presumably most of them are not rich. Do they get the same ability to express themselves as we will give to Dave Chappelle or whoever, Gaffigan, Seinfeld, I don't know, insert whoever you want. Do they get that same thing? I would expect a little bit of acknowledgement of that disparity from the people who are already typing about how we're killing free speech in the comment section. You don't want me expressing what I think while defending his ability to express. I like Dave Chappelle in the past. I love a lot of stuff of what he's said. I would defend a lot of it obviously too. Do I get that same ability? Does a Netflix employee, does a random trans person get that same ability? And you obviously do not believe that they do. At least be honest about that.
Yeah, so.
You don't have to agree with them. But you can be consistent.
Yeah, no, but I think you hit the nail on the head, right? I don't agree with censorship in either direction, right? So I think the workers have the right to protest as they did today, right? And I want to be clear about something. During this walkout, this rally, they didn't try to take it off the platform. And I think that's the right move. But they do have the right to express how they feel about it, okay? But I also do not agree with taking it off the platform. Look, there were moments in that special that I didn't love. There were moments I didn't like, but there were also great moments. And I just trust people to be able to like watch those kinds of things and have a nuanced opinion about it. I think a lot of the commentary that I've seen from people has been in the form of watching tidbits of it instead of watching it in its entirety. And it's like, I get it. I get that the parts that people are offended by are incredibly harsh, but there's never any room for a nuanced discussion about anything, ever, right? So it's like, I'm like almost a little scared to admit that I enjoyed parts of that special because I feel like people are gonna think that I'm just justifying their interpretation of the awful parts of the special. But everyone's gonna have a different interpretation of it, right? But I will admit that this is now the third special where he seems to be very hyper focused on the trans community.
At least it might be more. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and it's like we get it, we get it. Like let's move on. Now during the virtual walkout, the participating staffers will not do any work for Netflix and instead engage in content that does support the trans community and donate to charities. And by the way, the CEO for Netflix or the co-CEO earlier said that he would not take the special off the platform. He got a lot of backlash for that. And now after the rally happened, Ted Sarandos, my bad. Ted Sarandos, he's the co-CEO of Netflix, wrote to staff in a leaked internal memo last week that content on screen doesn't directly translate to real world harm. That was what he previously said, but he responded today with a much softer tone. Hold on, let me just give you the statement from today. This is the last graphic. He says, hi, for coverage of today's Netflix employee walkout, here's a statement attributable to Netflix spokesperson. We value our trans colleagues and allies and understand the deep hurt that's been caused. We respect the decision of any employee who chooses to walk out and recognize we have much more work to do within Netflix and in our content. And I think that there was a change in the response to the workers and their concerns because they staged a walkout.
Yeah.
Right? It shows you how much power workers actually have if they're, willing to put something on the line and strike or walk out. And so I think that's the main reason why they got the reaction they did today.
Yeah, the first one was just like, okay, it doesn't, no, he didn't say it and like someone keeled over dead. I get that.
Yeah.
Like that's not the only thing someone can have a problem with.
Well, it's been a heavy show, but have no fear. When we come back, nude art. That's right, nude art. We'll see you in a few. Hello, somebody wrote in our super chat section and said, thanks for covering some of the strikes rising up all over the country. There are many more you can reference, especially in the context of this question. Are there strike URLs where we can donate? First of all, it's a great question, and I don't know. So through my research on these stories, I haven't come across any effort to fundraise, but I'm sure if you look it up, if you Google, there might be some resources, there might be some way to help the striking workers. But I also wanna just note that I believe it was last week, also cover the proposed strikes for other workers in other sectors. So check out that story. It's actually, by the way, it's like one of the things that makes me so happy. It was on Wednesday, I did the story on my own. And it was one of those stories where I'm like, I know it's not gonna do well, but I don't care. Like, we gotta cover it. And what I mean by do well is it'll get 30,000 views max. No, it blew up.
Oh yes, I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah,
I have that same feeling about a lot of stuff, and it's one of the most depressing parts of this job.
I know, but it makes me so happy when you guys prove me wrong. Yes, I was surprised, but so happy. So thank you. When you guys come across videos like that, please share it, because it's not just about the video doing well for us. It's about getting the message about important news out to the world.
Yeah, but more importantly about it doing well for us.
Whatever.
By the way, Jordan, 32 minutes ago, just tweeted at Anna Kasparian, at Johnny Derola, cowards.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I guess so.
But like, as I said,
I'm
to
a coward
Jordan,
with taste buds left. That's all.
I've told Jordan on Twitter, I've told the world, I think a real leader knows when to be a coward. And this is the time. I'm a coward today, okay? I'm not gonna eat the Pocky chip, not interested. All right, Stephen Turner writes in and says, as always, Anna, right on point. Last time I saw this kind of vehicle, the military vehicle, was in a conflict zone, so Rome continues to burn. Mr. Charles writes in and says, the 50 cal rifle that Marjorie Taylor Greene is raffling off can blow through that MRAP like a hot knife through butter. This is America. Is that true? I don't
know about that specific gun, but there's anti-material rifles that are designed to destroy vehicles.
I like that the 50 cal gun, like it packs a punch, but it's low calories, I'm just kidding.
Your California gun humor.
Oh my God. Nana Nikki writes in and says, this type of evidence is the same as putting a rape victim sexual history out there. Why do defendants continue to get away with putting victims on trial? Before paternity tests and stuff, they used to do that when it came to child support trials, right? It's crazy. Anyway, we gotta get back to the show. See you there. Welcome back to the show. Anna Kasparian and John Idarola with you. We have entered the fun portion of the show with 14 minutes left. But I like this story because it shows you that you can turn lemons into lemonade, okay? When it comes to certain types of censorship, you can get around it. There are different options. So, in protest of art censorship by social media platforms like TikTok, Vienna's museum has created a OnlyFans account in order to post, oh my goodness. In order to post
wait, let me get the account name for that. Hold on, one second. Okay, I think I got it.
In order to post art that happens to display nudity, okay? By the way, look, I actually really like TikTok. I don't understand why some of the anti-nudity policy goes as far as it does, because we're literally talking about like sculptures and things, okay? So you see a peen in a sculpture, it's not the same as like obscene pornography.
It might be better.
It might be, it might be.
Depends on the imagination of the sculptor.
So let me give you the backstory here, all right? In July, the TikTok account of the city's Albertina Museum was banned for posting photographs from Japanese artist Nobuyoshi Araki depicting obscured breasts. I don't know what obscured breasts mean.
I think that means that it was either blurred or pixelated or kind of covered by something. Which sounds like enough as it is, they're not real.
Enough censorship for them.
It's literally like, I don't know if they understand this, but like stone doesn't become a boob just because you make it look like one. It's still just a stone. It could be a pug or a boob, same material, it's just stone.
Why are boobs such a big deal? Like, look, and don't get me wrong.
Well, there's 8 reasons. So the first is,
no, but you get what I mean, right? Like you go to, I remember going to Barcelona, hanging out at the beach, and like topless women was not, like it just wasn't a problem. No one cared, no one was looking, except for me and my friend Lauren, who I traveled with, because it was so different for us. It was so foreign for us, if you will. Like, and we were just like, can we do this too? And no one cares? It's awesome.
Just really fast, in terms of the hypocrisy. So there's the nude beaches, obviously, which are sort of normalized in a lot of countries there. But Haven't you told a story about like you tried to go into like a cathedral wearing spaghetti straps and they were like, no.
So it wasn't even spaghetti straps. I was wearing an outfit that had like kind of a low back, but it had long sleeves with a low back. Look, I understand it though. It's a cathedral. You're entering a religious building. I was a brat about it back then, but now I get it. It's a respect thing. I get it. But like in terms of being out at the beach, yeah, what's the big deal?
Didn't God create us naked? And like he liked that. That was like his thing. And then we put on clothes and it was bad. How did that get all twisted?
But I mean, look, if you're worried about the prudishness.
That's as far as I got into the Bible. I might have missed something after, but it was pretty clear in those opening pages.
It was clear, but then the forbidden fruit, and then all of a sudden they realize that nudity is a thing and they're embarrassed by it.
Then shouldn't we forget? That'd make us better.
I don't know.
Anyway,
you're asking me to like give you a logical explanation for why we're so prudish about nudity, even when it has to do with a sculpture or art and is not in a pornographic context whatsoever. Real quick, let me give more from the story, because the Vienna Tourism Board was not happy with what TikTok was doing in censoring the images that they were posting. In a press release, they wrote that that Vienna and its art institutions are among the casualties of this new wave of prudishness, with nude statues and famous artworks blacklisted under social media guidelines, and repeat offenders even finding their accounts temporarily suspended. So that's when they came up with a new plan. They say that's why we decided to put the capital's world famous explicit artworks on OnlyFans. So they started an OnlyFans account in order to display literal artwork without getting taken down or censored.
How are they doing? They got a lot of followers?
They're apparently doing real well.
That's not a bad idea then. I can start my own competing one. I'm not that great of an artist. I have colored pencils and I'm not afraid to use them.
So can we take a look at the content that ends up getting censored on TikTok?
Can we?
Yeah, let's take a look, okay? Hopefully. So that's what they're that is apparently inappropriate.
I don't even know. Isn't that I think from the face that was a man?
Yeah.
What was nude about that? Are they just they're strategically moving around the nude.
She's giving a seductive look. You can't have that.
Saucy look. Oh, what's the hand squeezing? I have several ideas. That's a pizza.
Look, if you're like,
that's a pizza.
If you find
might be a rocky
this titillating, there's something wrong with you.
Dun, dun.
Right?
Yeah, or like unacceptable. Like, okay, so that's ridiculous. It's a little bit complex in that. Okay, so obviously platforms should get to decide what audience they're targeting. So Instagram doesn't want you to put up one of those reels of you having sex with someone. Like they don't want that. And you get to decide that stuff. I do think that it's a reflection of how backwards we are in terms of bodies, that like we think male boobs are that different from female boobs. Honestly, if we all just took our shirts off, it would be really shocking for a day, kind of titillating for 3, and then we'd move on. It literally wouldn't even last a week, and then we'd be okay afterward. You'd have seen so many boobs, you wouldn't care about it anymore. We just won't make that leap. I've been championing it for a long time, and no one has joined me. I go out once a year, June 12th, every year, topless, nobody follows me. But
why that day?
I don't know, it's the middle of the year. Seems like a good time. A reset, it's warm. Don't wanna go out too cold, But anyway, they should obviously get to decide what they have, but we can also criticize how ridiculous it is, especially when it's artwork. Now, like, artwork is a broad thing. You could have digital artwork that looks indistinguishable from the real thing. And so they should get to decide. But we can also criticize them, and we could try to move society in a direction where this stuff won't be as demonized, whether it's just boobs being shown on Instagram or it's OnlyFans trying to literally turn on all of their creators because they want credit card companies to be cool with them, even if it results in literally no one being on their platform. And so it's partly about Instagram, it's partly about culture, it's partly about like why corporate America would be so terrified by boobs, but you could show gore on Instagram.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that much of what gets decided on these platforms is what advertisers want, right? So how do these platforms make money in 2 different ways. The first way is by selling your data to third parties. That's really where the money is for these various social media platforms. But the second way is through advertising. So and I understand the rage that content creators feel toward platforms like YouTube, for instance, because as we know, content that is important to share with the world, with the country, oftentimes gets demonetized because it's the very content that advertisers do not want to advertise on. They consider it controversial, it's not brand safe. Yeah. And so I feel like a lot of the debate or a lot of the grievances that we hear from content creators doesn't focus on that enough, right? It seems to like display this notion that YouTube as a corporation is like they have people sitting there and picking and choosing what videos they like and don't like. But that's not what's happening. They've created algorithms specifically to cater to the demands of the advertisers. That's the issue. It's the way that the platform is funded. It's the way that the content gets monetized.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Anyway, all right, we've got one more story, a fun story for you. It's a very old school second hour type story.
Oh my God, it's so old school.
It's so old school. All right, a woman is suing Kellogg's for not putting enough strawberries in their strawberry Pop-Tarts. Elizabeth Russet was shocked to find that the Pop-Tart is not in fact packed with strawberries, but is packed with all sorts of ingredients that I can't really pronounce, but also other fruit. Not just strawberries, there are other fruits involved.
I actually did not know that.
Me
what's
either.
in it?
Okay, well, we'll get to that. The suit claims that the sweet filling of the breakfast item, people really eat that for breakfast. I feel like it's a dessert item, but anyway, is filled with pears and apples. Believe it or
what?
Yeah,
pears and apples?
The suit claims that the sweet filling of the breakfast item is filled with pears and apples more so than strawberries. Russet alleged in the suit that it's not enough to provide the berry's nutritional benefit and to elicit a strawberry taste.
I think it kind of tastes like strawberry a little bit, as much as anything does these days. I mean, who's eating an actual strawberry to know?
It's a Pop-Tart. Okay. She knows. Let's look at the list of the ingredients, okay? This is a screenshot, and look, I mean, look, it's got a ton of stuff. Like, contains 2% or less of fructose, wheat starch, calcium carbonate, salt, leavening, like all this. I don't know what all this stuff is. Sodium acid, pyrophosphate, baking soda, vegetable juice for color, dried pears, dried apples.
In it? I'm not gonna eat them anymore. I'm specifically avoiding vegetables. That's why I'm eating something that's in both foil and a box.
You love Pop-Tarts.
I do,
this story's for you.
Although not really strawberry Pop-Tarts.
What's your fave?
Brown sugar cinnamon.
Oh,
yeah,
I like the s'mores one.
The s'mores is good too. I don't normally like the like liquidy ones like the s'mores. I like the more hard ones. Yeah, cherry's good too. I actually did for our members on YouTube, one of our top 10s is top 10 Pop-Tart flavors. What if they were to just sell it be more honest, be like, this is apple, pear, strawberry Pop-Tarts. That actually sounds kind of cool, like multi-fruit strawberries.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why they're not disclosing that information. Maybe because they realize Americans are allergic to fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
They're like, wait,
what the hell's going on with wild berry?
Fruit in one? No, it's too much for me.
It is weird though. And honestly, the weirdest thing about it is I would have expected that there's none of any of it in there.
Right.
I didn't think there was fruit in it.
Yeah, like no natural ingredients at all.
There's fruit in it.
Do you
did she just drop the box and in slow-mo hit the ground? No fruit. Who thinks that?
Have you ever gone to a bakery that makes Pop-Tarts from scratch?
Yes, at least two that I can think of, and yes, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I think I want to try to make that.
Yeah, I mean, there's recipes.
Yeah.
Then you can finish it off right, putting butter on it, put it in a microwave.
Yes, yes.
I just want to put that in your head.
Yes. All right, and then finally, if you're wondering, well, how much is she suing Kellogg's for? Russet claims that Kellogg's is using their packaging to fool folks who want a snack packed with more strawberries. She says the damages exceed $5 million and also wants to see Pop-Tarts labeled more accurately.
But the damage to her exceeds $5. How many has she bought?
Look, you can't just look, you can sue for however much you want, but you have to prove damages, right? Like you have to prove that Kellogg's engaging in false marketing has led to $5 million worth of damages in your life. And like, obviously she's not gonna do that. This story reminds me of a super old story that we did on TYT. Like it's maybe 13 or 14 years ago we did this story about a woman who was suing the makers of Crunchberry.
Captain Crunch.
Captain Crunch, because she was under the impression that it contained actual berries. And she was shocked to find out that no, it's corn puffs flavored to taste like berries.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing about that story is that if you live your whole life just eating Crunch berries and Pop-Tarts, it so deprives your brain of necessary chemicals that you could end up thinking, wait, why doesn't this have more fruit in it? This is what we produce in America. Both are delicious products, by the way.
I know, yeah.
I do like Pop-Tarts.
They're Scooby snacks for sure. All right, well, that does it for the main show. We're gonna have an ice cream party for our members in the bonus episode. Become a member, click on that join button or go to tyt.com/join. See you there.
Our audience has given us everything, so we couldn't be more connected. When we first started,